Alright guys, in this lesson we're going to talk about comparing fractions. So our learning target is I can compare fractions with like and unlike denominators. Like means that they have the same denominator, and unlike means that they have different denominators. And that makes a big difference when comparing. So we're going to be using greater than, less than, and equal to compare them. So we're going to start with like denominators. That means they have the same denominator. So the same number of equal pieces. The same number of equal pieces. So if we look here at the first one, 3/5 and 4/5. They both have 5 as a denominator. Since they have the same denominator, we can just look at their numerator. So this numerator is a 3. This numerator is a 4. So let's compare 3 and 4. 3 is less than 4. So that means 3/5 is less than 4/5. So let's look at the second one. We both have 8 as a denominator, so they have the same denominator. So we're going to look at their numerator, 7 and 4. 7 is greater than 4, so that means 7/8 is greater than 4/8. And looking at this last one here, they both have 10 as a denominator. So we look at their numerator, we have 3 and 8. So I know that 3 is less than 8, so 3/10 is less than 8/10. Okay, so now let's look at unlike denominators. So this is when they have different denominators. In order to compare unlike denominators, fractions must have the same denominator, or we can call it a common denominator. A common denominator. So if we look here, 7/10 and 3/5, our denominators are 10 and 5. So we can't compare tenths and fifths. So first what we're going to do is list out the multiples of each of these. So 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. And we could keep going, but I'm going to go ahead and stop there. And then we list out the multiples of 10. 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So now we compare and find a common denominator. And we want the least common denominator. Least common. So that means the smallest number that they have in common. So if we look here, I know that 5 is here, but I don't have a 5 here. So the least common denominator is 10. So that means I'm going to make both denominators now a 10. Okay? And I'm going to use multiplication to figure out the equivalent fractions here. So if I look here, how do I get from 10 to 10? Well, that's times 1. So to get my numerator, 7 times 1 is 7. So that equivalent fraction stays the same. So we're going to find an equivalent fraction here. So how do I get from 5 to 10? 5 times 2. So if I do times 2 here, I'm going to do times 2 here. 3 times 2 is 6. So now I can easily compare 7/10 and 6/10. Since we have the same denominator, I look at their numerator. 7 is greater than 6. So 7/10 is greater than 6/10. But we need to go back to the original problem. That means 7/10 is greater than 3/5. Okay, so let's look at the second example here. We've got two different denominators, 8 and 4. So we're going to take those two denominators and list out the first few multiples. 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. And we're going to find the least common denominator. Least common, so the one that is the smallest. So we don't have a 4 here, but we both have an 8. So that one's in common here. So that means 8 is going to be my new denominator. And I'm going to make equivalent fractions to help me compare. So from 8 to 8, I can do times 1. So to get my numerator, 2 times 1 is 2. Now if I look here, 4 times 2 is 8. So if I do times 2 on the top, 3 times 2 is 6. Now I can easily compare because I look at my numerators. We have the same denominator, so I look at my numerators. 2 is less than 6. So 2/8 is less than 6/8, which means 2/8 is less than